I'm Scott L. Miller. It's the 21st of April, 2023. This is my vlog of daily life living in Leon, Nicaragua. Today we're going to be talking about what do you do when the power goes out and you live in a place like Nicaragua. Stay tuned after the bump. We're going to go into that. And I'm taking advantage of a day when the power is actually out here. And honestly, this is the first time in about 4 months that I've been able to do this, or had to do this, however you want to look at it. And so I'm out for a walk in the middle of the day, enjoying what is actually a pretty beautiful day. A little bit hazy, a little bit warm. We're going to get up to about 98 today. That's 36 in Celsius and around 98 in Fahrenheit. And the power has been out for about an hour. Now I can hear a bunch of stuff going on down the street. I don't know if that's related. I do know that somewhere in Leon there is power, and I know a few places there is not. So I don't have any details, and we're gonna be figuring that out probably throughout the day. I know Alan, who's on the far side of town, he's got power, and we've got some employees who live somewhere in town and they don't have power, and we don't in Outages. So we don't know what's going on. Often that is the case, that we won't know what's going on. But this really important to understand, this does not happen very often. So here in Leon, we tend to lose power in tiny bits, like 15 to 45 seconds fairly regularly, maybe once a week. And then larger outages that are planned will happen maybe once every 3 months. And an outage that is not planned, like today, well, it's pretty rare. This is actually the first one that I'm aware of since we moved to Outages, and that has been 5 months. So while it happens, it's not that frequent. And when we look at family and friends who are in the States, we're hearing about outages with them much more often, or maybe not much more often, but more often. And importantly, you guys who watch my channel, you get an outsized number of videos filmed during outages, because when there's an outage, it's a perfect time for me to go record episodes. So when we have an outage of any size here, right, if we have a 15 to 45 second, we have batteries and stuff at the house, so I don't even notice that the power goes out. I hear the air conditioner beep, my UPS unit goes beep, and a second, by the time I look, everything's on. My computer never missed a beat, our internet never missed a beat, because those things are all battery backed. So for the little things, with the tiniest bit of planning, they don't affect you at all. Those are, and the same thing would happen in the States, but in the US, you don't tend to get those 15-second outages once a week. That just doesn't happen. The US is really good about preventing the tiny outages. What it's bad with is dealing with large-scale outages, whereas here it's the opposite. Nicaragua has tons of these really tiny little outages, but when something big happens, generally it's handled really quickly and efficiently. It's a lot like comparing traditional telephony, old-style landline telephones with modern VoIP internet-based phones. Old-style legacy phones have a tendency to avoid small outages. People say, my phone has worked for years, but when their phone stops working, it often stops working for weeks or months at a time. I have had many customers who've had 2 to 90-week outages. My own phone history, I never had a phone company able to get my phones working as an adult. When I was a kid, my parents had working phones, but as an adult, never once was a phone company able to give me phone service. And eventually I stopped trying, but I went something like 3 to 4 years where the phone company could never get me a working phone. And so that was an outage of 4 years with landlines. I was paying for it. I had the lines, but they couldn't make them work. So the way that we look at outages varies, and we have a certain conditioning to ignore outages when they're really long-term like that. We start saying, well, the service just doesn't work. Yes, that's an outage. That's what an outage looks like. You don't have the ability to make a call for weeks at a time. That's an outage. But there's a cultural thing to give a free pass to really big outages. Not with power. With power, we hold people accountable no matter what, at least at a societal level. At a legal level, one of the challenges in the US is they're currently fighting with the power companies that they actually have no accountability to their customers or to the government. You know, the energy supply in Texas, for example, has claimed that it is sovereign and above the US government and doesn't have to supply power or honor rates or honor contracts because they're a sovereign state and owned extranationally and not governed by US law, even though they're a US monopoly and own the rights to power distribution in the state. So you actually have companies that are claiming to be the government, and with more rights than the actual government, more power than the actual government. And as it's playing out, it appears to be true, right? They have the ability to charge whatever they want, and they can turn off the power whenever they want, and there's no holding them accountable. So that real problem exists. Here, the power is overseen by the government, and they do have a mandate to keep it on. And when it's out, they do their best to fix it. But so here, much more like the internet in the US, if there's going to be an internet outage, it tends to be short. You rarely get a major outage, because they know you're not bound by, I'm in the way. Hola. They know you're not bound to a single carrier. If your internet's out, you're going to move to another carrier. You're not going to pay your bill. It's much harder to extort you on a level where your internet doesn't work. They're looking at non-payment and potentially lawsuits and losing customers, possibly en masse. And so even though there is quite a bit of internet monopolies, their ability to simply not provide service is far lower. So when you have modern VoIP phones, yes, you're still going to have outages, but they tend to be in minutes, not hours, but much more frequent. It is simply the nature of the old technology versus the new. And with the power distribution, somehow it ends up the same, that the United States has this legacy style. It very rarely has small outages, but when it has big ones, they're big. And Nicaragua has it where they tend to have these small outages and very rarely have the big ones. That was way too long to explain how the power behavior is different, but it's important to understand what you're dealing with. That in the United States, if you said, well, the power is going to be out, and I said, oh, just get yourself a UPS, like 50 bucks at the store, you'd say, what? That's crazy. How's that going to fix anything? I don't need an extra 10 minutes. I need an extra 4 hours, right? I can't just put that on battery. And you say, oh, right, because your outages are big. But here in Nicaragua, if you say, well, what do I do about all these power outages? You say, just get a battery. Say, what? Yeah, it's like a little one from the store. It only needs to last you a couple minutes. If you have one that lasts 2 minutes, that's going to cover the bulk of your outages. If you get one that lasts 15 minutes, which is about what we do, it covers almost everything. It is really rare for the batteries to run out. It's so rare that I have no idea how long they're going to last. Power goes out and I'm like, do I get 10 minutes? Do I get an hour? I don't know, right? Because it only happens once in a blue moon. So that's the simplest thing. For the most things in Nicaragua, you can ride out the power outages simply by having an uninterrupted power supply, UPS battery for your computers or your lights or whatever it is you want them for. Right now, for a lot of things, you don't need power. If you're only losing power for a few minutes, you don't care that your air conditioning turns off. You don't care that your fans turn off. It doesn't really disrupt things. Now, you may want lights, because what if the power goes off in the middle of the night? Yeah, it'd be nice to have some kind of backup for that, but you could also just use flashlights. Like, that's easy to work around however you like. But the big thing is televisions, internet, computers, monitors, all those kinds of things. And those you can easily put onto UPS units, and that will ride out the majority of your outages right there. And for most people, that's enough. That's going to solve it for you right there. And for us, 5 months of living in Sutiaba, that is absolutely all we need. We have no need for further power mitigation. Now, for some of you, having the minute-to-minute battery backups may not be enough. You may simply be in need of more power protection. For example, maybe you have medical equipment that you absolutely need to keep running for long periods of time. Maybe it draws a lot of power, and simply going to battery is not going to cut it. It might get you by for a minute, but it's not going to fix the problem. So for you, the easy answer is generators here are easily accessible, they are cheap, and they work really well. I think we spent about $550, somewhere in that vicinity, to get a dual fuel Ford American-made generator that works great. We actually have multiple of them. We don't bother having them at the house because we simply don't need it. We don't lose power that often, and when we do, we have cooking fuel for food, so that's not an issue, and we have the batteries for computers, so that's not an issue. And then when it's really, really rare that we're out for any longer period of time, I go out for a walk and enjoy the weather. Of course, it is super hot today, so it's a rough one because it's currently about 11 o'clock in the morning and the sun is beating down and it is pushing 98. So I'm pretty warm, so sorry if I'm getting sweaty on this walk. because I'm walking in the direct sunlight for this whole video, of course. So getting a generator, very easy to do. Getting someone to hook it up and put it into your main power grid, not a problem. And that's going to run an air conditioner for you. That's going to run a CPAP for you. It's going to run most equipment that you would want, including you could have an air-conditioned room, be wearing a CPAP, and have your computer or a couple computers running at the same time, a television, and that's all going to work fine off of a single small portable generator. If you need something more, you can get more than one generator, or you can get a bigger generator. That's a bit more of a pain. There are definitely places like out on the beach that opt for big diesel generators. That's an option, but getting a small dual fuel one works really well for basically everyone. You can get them that are propane, so you can get the really big propane tanks so you can stay running for days. Not that we've ever had to do that, but just in case, you'd be prepared. And it can flip over to using gasoline should you need, which is a nice option. If you can't get propane for some reason, you can just get gasoline and keep the power on that way. And of course, your generator will power your batteries, which will even out the power anyway. So you have a lot of options just with that. Now, a lot of people ask, well, can you get solar? Won't that fix it? It's such a bright, I mean, look, won't solar work? Yes. Solar is widely available here. We get it directly from China in most cases, not from the US. So the US supply problems don't apply to us here. Getting solar power here is really easy and more affordable than in the US. And getting it installed is no problem. There's expertise around that everywhere. I'm gonna show that's the power truck going by right now with all the propane. That's Tropic Gas with a whole bunch of tanks. You can see the big yellow tanks in the back of that truck. That's what you would run a generator on. That's exactly what we use for our generators, and that's who delivers them. They come in trucks like that, they drop it off, and you can have power delivered to you. You start getting low or you want to have a spare tank, just order it, they'll drop it off, and easy. So yes, you can go solar, absolutely. You could do wind. We have a fair amount of wind here. I don't know how good or how available wind power systems are for home use, but certainly you can do that. You have basically as many options as you could possibly imagine, but the actual problem that you're trying to solve is in reality very small. It's not something that you actually need to worry about. Everybody talks about it as if it's a major thing. And 10 years ago, or even 8 years ago, it was a major thing. So that is a legitimate concern coming from somewhere. But today, Nicaragua is a major power supplier to the entire region. It depends not only on having power, but on providing power everywhere else. It is a completely different country than it used to be. It's not a tourism-based economy. It's an infrastructure and service-based economy. And that means they need the power on to do the jobs that drive the country. So they have put a big investment into making sure they have that power. We have wind, we have geothermal, we have dams, and we have more traditional power plants. All those things exist here, and new ones are going in, but we have plenty of power. That there's not a shortage, and it's reasonably priced, and it is quite reliable. So because there's so many companies that want to have staff based here, want to have offices here, they have to have reliable power to do that. And the country has delivered. So that is how you would handle the power here. Either just live with it, but I would recommend the batteries. The generator is easily a good investment if you are anything but just hanging out at home and the power doesn't matter. But remember, we don't use electricity for cooking here outside of microwaves. So for the most part, because the outages are short, you don't worry about the power out for things like refrigerators, and you don't need it for cooking. Microwaves can be a pain. So for the most part, it's for lights, your computers, if you're really extreme, your air conditioner. But once you've lived here for any amount of time, you generally don't need that. Those of us in Leon and Chinandega, yeah, we might need that. But if you're in Managua or the mountain towns or whatever, you can handle not having air conditioning even for a few hours, even on the hottest days. Anyway, thanks for joining me. If you'd like to support the channel and help me pay for one way or another to keep myself cool, get up there to buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. That helps immeasurably. Mostly I use it to buy the cameras and batteries and all that equipment needed to make the show. And it doesn't even quite cover the whole show, as my wife will tell you, but it covers the majority of it. And I really appreciate everyone who participates up there and helps make this all possible. But that's not for everyone. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about the show. Share it on social media. Link it different places. Let people know about us. And of course, get down in those comments. I know you've got questions about power. Where do you find a generator? How do you hook it up? What is solar? Like, how do you do that? Like, all these different things. I know you've got questions. Get down there, and we'll also do another episode sometime in the future. And if I don't do it timely, remind me, because I do work in IT, about choosing computers specifically around moving to places like Nicaragua, and ways to make that a better decision that applies to how do you make your power better. So hit me up for that. Make sure I do that. And I will see all of you from exciting Managua, where we are heading first thing in the morning to celebrate, not because it's my daughter's birthday, that's next week, but we're going tomorrow morning to Managua for the celebration for her birthday because she loves going to Managua, which is something that probably surprises you. And we're gonna be staying at the Hilton and hanging out in the city for a couple days. So I'll be filming tomorrow from Managua, and I will see all of you tomorrow.